So many of the details about the shooter for Charlie Kirk have come out. We're going to go into that. President Trump is calling for George Soros to be officially investigated for all of the damage that he has done to the United States of America. Also, how the mainstream media and the Democrat Party use hateful rhetoric to foment rage, excite their base. To help me go through that, I have Alex Newman. Alex, thank you for joining me again.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Stephen.
So just some background. Alex is an independent journalist. He is author of The Deep State and also the founder of Liberty Sentinel. They do news broadcasts. They have a free newsletter. I'll make sure to put a link down below to that. So we're getting the details now about Tyler Robinson here in the southern part of Utah as the killer, the assassin of Charlie Kirk. This is horribly sad. I want to get into some of the details that are just coming out about this, but my understanding, Alex, is that you knew Charlie, you guys interacted. Tell me just a little bit of background, your experience with Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Yeah, this hits really close to home. I first met Charlie in person, at least in 2023. He asked me to be the keynote speaker at one of his summits, and you know, in interacting with him, it became clear to me very quickly that the guy you see on TV, the guy that you see on YouTube, is the same guy in real life. He was kind to the waiters, to the support staff. He was just funny. And it was a little bit nerve-wracking for me. You know, he asked me to go up right after he did to speak about education. I didn't quite know how to handle that, so I started off with a joke, and I wasn't sure if it would go over well. I said, you know, you've made it in life when Charlie Kirk is your warm-up band. and I didn't know if he was going to laugh or be infuriated, but he cracked up with everybody else and even invited me back to do the same thing next year. And I think he's a martyr. He's a martyr for the cause of freedom. He's a martyr for our country. He's a martyr for Jesus Christ, who he often and regularly proclaimed as his Lord and Savior. This is a tremendous loss, not just for, you know, the conservative movement or MAGA or whatever. This is a loss for our whole country, for the youth of this country. But I hope and I pray that something good will come out of it. The last time we had a long conversation, I had him on my show maybe 8 months ago or so. And I went back and watched it again because it was the last time we had a real talk. I mean, other than just brief interactions backstage and stuff. And I asked him, Charlie, describe the nature of the threat we're facing here. And he didn't even hesitate. The first words that came out of his mouth were, this is demonic at its core. And I asked him the solutions to these problems we're facing. And the first subject that he addressed was the education of our children. We've got to protect them. So he was a giant. There's nobody that can fill his shoes, but I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to know him. I know he's been on your show too, and just giant hole in our country today.
Yeah. Let me get into some of that that you just mentioned. So this Tyler Robinson grows up in southern Utah, down by the Las Vegas, Utah, or the Nevada, Utah border on your way to Las Vegas. These stories are really interesting. So two white men, both raised in conservative households. The Tyler Robinson appears to have been raised at least with Judeo-Christian values. I don't believe that he's Mormon. Utah has a large Mormon population, but based on saying his youth pastor or his spiritual leader, that's not the way that Mormons talk about each other. They would have said a bishop or something like that, but I could be wrong. So he's raised, his parents are still married. His dad was in law enforcement, now in construction. His mother works. Then he goes off to college. And during the Joe Biden presidency, starts to get into politics. We now know that just a few nights before the killing, that he was complaining to his parents how much he hated Charlie Kirk, that Charlie Kirk represented evil to him, that Charlie Kirk was somebody that he disliked very much, felt like his opposing view to his new views needed to be dealt with. Of course, to them, this is all just, kitchen table banter. They don't realize that, within 30 hours, he's going to be on a rooftop shooting his. How do you think this happens? Is this, you start getting into politics and TikTok and the mainstream media and the influences start to creep in? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's so many things to say here, Stephen. I'll start by saying that I still remain somewhat skeptical of the story that we're hearing. It may be true. I don't know. But one of the first things that crossed my mind when we saw what we all saw was that sure looked like a professional job. And I know very intelligent people, people who've been in special forces, people who've investigated assassinations for a living. Roger Stone, who's written 2 New York Times best-selling books about assassinations, high-profile assassinations, all concluded early on that this looked like a professional hit. And so, I think we'll have to see where this goes. But what we're learning about this young man is unfortunately being replicated times a million all across this country. And that is an incredible radicalization process that's taking place under the guise of education. It's actually the subject of my latest book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. And people ask me, is that hyperbole? What do you mean indoctrinating our children to death? And I said, no, I mean that in the most literal sense possible. This will have deadly consequences like you can't imagine. And if we're being told the truth about this story so far, which maybe we are, it would be a perfect example of that. You have a young man who was raised by decent, honorable parents, who was raised with good values, who, because of the influence of what passes for education, I won't even call it education because it's not, but what passes for education, it's really behavioral conditioning, programming, just indoctrination writ large, is taking otherwise perfectly decent, normal children from good families and turning them into hateful radicals. And we're seeing this even beyond just the murder. We're seeing this in the aftermath as all these people are taking to social media and cackling and celebrating that a dad of young children was brutally murdered. It's unfortunate, Stephen. It's a problem that's systematic. I think we're going to see much more in the years ahead if we don't get a handle on this. And it's heartbreaking because it's happening to so many families across this country that they're losing their children because they didn't realize what was happening under the guise of education.
Yeah. What's interesting is, you have Democrats that are increasingly becoming more anti-family, anti-nuclear family, pro-single mothers, pro-abortion. So they're having far fewer children. They mock marriage. They mock the beauty of becoming a parent. At the same time, they're going to run out of people. So they either need illegal immigrants or they start to hijack your child's mind. And I mean, a lot of the, I call them goblins that have been on TikTok and Twitter celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Many of these are school teachers. Many of these are in the education system. Many of these are in the medical establishment. And that is very scary. Now, one of the big stories going out is, okay, this was obviously a Republican. Well, according to the Daily Mail, he did not like Republican values, even though his parents are registered Republican, which most people don't know in Utah. When you get into politics, you're automatically registered a Republican, and then you have to do the effort of switching to the Democrat Party. His dad was a Donald Trump supporter, and he was vehemently against Donald Trump and against Charlie Kirk, and he was never registered and he had never voted. So want to put that baby to bed, that this was not some raging Donald Trump fan who suddenly decided that Charlie Kirk was evil. As he got into politics, based on conversations with his parents, he very much disliked conservative values. And so I just wonder how much of the mainstream media, TikTok, things like that start to influence you. I did want to show one thing here on the show. Let me see if I can pull this up. Oh, it looks like I've not brought it up. But basically, someone put together a superset of over 5 minutes of the mainstream media calling MAGA people Nazis, MAGA people fascists, that they are the most evil people in our country, that conservative Christians are killing the country, that if you are a Christian or a conservative, you're automatically a white supremacist, that you are evil, you are the worst thing. Joe Biden, the biggest threat to our country are Republicans. Over and over again, year after year after year. At some point, if you're tuned in and you believe that that is real news versus propaganda, you would automatically start to believe those thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you combine that with the dangerous worldview that's being instilled in children across this country through education, through social media, through the algorithms, through the textbooks, where essentially life has no value. Your life is no more valuable than your pet goldfish. There is no purpose in life other than just seeking pleasure. And these evil Republican Nazis are trying to interfere with your ability to have pleasure. It's only logical when you believe those kinds of lies from the pit of hell that you act out, or at least that some people act out in ways that seem crazy to those of us who do have a moral framework, to those of us who do live in the real world, where Trump is not actually a Nazi, where Trump is not actually literally Hitler. And you see this from the earliest ages, right? In entertainment, in education, and even in social media. This kind of grooming of people. What would you have done if baby Hitler was there? Would you have killed him? I mean, they're planting these thoughts. And they use a whole bunch of very sophisticated tools to break down the values that parents try to instill in their children. One that they started deploying in 1966 in the United States is called values clarification. And it actually sets the stage for exactly what we're seeing here. You combine it with false information, it leads to atrocity. So what they say to these young people, and they did this to me when I was in school, is, hey, you're on a ship, your ship is sinking, and now there's 11 of you in the life raft, but the carrying capacity is only 10. So who are you going to murder? Who are you going to kill so that the rest of you can survive? And what happened? They brag about this. They say that in 15 minutes, they can undermine everything that parents tried to instill in their child in 15 years. What happens is the child says, my parents are morons. My pastor's a doofus. The Bible's got to be fake, because clearly here we have a situation where the moral and ethical thing to do is to kill somebody, and therefore thou shalt not murder must be kooky. And so in a fraction of a second there, they managed to transform a child's entire worldview. And once you get to that point where you no longer understand that murder is wrong, that murder is evil, even of people who you disagree with, then it's only one short step to say, well, hey, maybe I'll kill that guy because he's a Nazi, he's a fascist, he disagrees with me. And so we're sitting on a powder keg, Stephen, that quite literally threatens the very future of our country. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic here. When you multiply this radicalization by tens of millions, it will be very difficult for our country to survive in a state of freedom and civilization and rule of law if we don't get this under control.
Yeah. Okay, I think I found that clip. If it has music, I'm going to edit this out. If not, then let's watch this. I just don't want to get a copyright, but let's go. Here we go.
Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
This is what kicking the shit out of fascism looks like.
Try to prevent the spread of the lawlessness and the fascist chaos that's been unleashed against us.
So when we say Donald Trump is a fascist, fascism, a huge component of fascism is uniting racism, bigotry, a form of racist nationalism.
We are now living in a fascist dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. We are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. We're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government.
Not only to roll over to Donald Trump's will, but to roll over our democracy and allow him to take over this country as a fascist dictator.
When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here.
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, no one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core.
Wow. Imagine hearing that over and over and over again. I just want to point out, I believe everyone on this screen, except for maybe Kamala Harris, has basically openly said or mocked or insinuated that they would love Donald Trump to die. To be taken out, to be the baby Hitler. And yet they compare him to Hitler on a regular basis. In fact, I saw this, and I know for a fact I can't show this because of copyright, but Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett she was on Charlemagne the God's show, and she said, we've got to tone this down. Both sides need to not use violent rhetoric. But then she says, when I say Trump is a wannabe Hitler, people should just necessarily know that I'm not saying to go out and hurt anybody. But they don't obviously know that. All they hear is over and over and over again how evil these other people are. And pretty soon they're not a human, therefore you can shoot them in the neck. Your thoughts on this radicalization through the mainstream media?
Yeah, and the radicalization through the mainstream media is one of the critical components of what we're facing as a nation. You know, they get prepared to be susceptible to this kind of indoctrination and propaganda through a dumbed-down so-called education. And then when you hear this relentless propaganda and you don't have traditional tools that we associate with thinking, logic, reason, ability to sift through evidence, you end up with this unbelievably absurd situation where a bunch of people who actually think like fascists think they're going to hurt people, kill people to stop fascism. and let me explain here. Right? Obviously, fascism, as defined by Benito Mussolini, the ultimate fascist was the merger of state and corporate power. That's essentially what the Democrat Party stands for today. Right? The government and the big corporations are going to work together to supposedly make life better for everybody. Right? But what are the hallmarks of fascism? Well, one of them is you must silence anybody who disagrees with the master plan of the people bringing together big government and big corporations. It's literally the ideology that these people are espousing. Massive petition just now at this college that Charlie Kirk was speaking at, massive petition begging for him to be banned from appearing on the college. Why would you want to silence the guy? Why can't his views be discussed? It's because these people are thinking like fascists. And in an incredible twist of irony, they justify this to themselves by claiming that they're fighting fascism. So that's how absurd the situation has become. And I think what we've seen in the last few days shows you just a little inkling of the danger that we're going to see in the years ahead if this problem is not dealt with.
Hey friends, I've got something huge for you today, but it's only for a limited time. As you know, I've partnered with Monetary Gold, the company I trust when it comes to protecting your retirement with physical gold and silver. And right now, they've put together an exclusive deal for my channel only. If you pick up the phone and call Monetary Gold today and tell them you want the Stephen Gardner deal, they'll cover all of your IRA fees for life. That's right, for life. But you have to call and ask for the deal today. No gimmicks, no gotchas, just a smart move to secure your retirement with a company that cuts out the middleman and puts you first. But here's the catch. This deal won't last forever, and it's only available for my audience. So don't wait. Call now, ask for the Stephen Gardner deal, and take the first step towards protecting your future with real, tangible wealth. I want you to call them right now at 800-608-1770 and make sure to say Stephen Gardner sent me. Yeah, it's interesting. The one of the main talking points in the last 12 months is that Donald Trump will destroy democracy, that Donald Trump is the single greatest threat to democracy. I find it hypocritical, though, that Democrats were like, oh, we actually had to destroy democracy in order to have democracy, right? Like they didn't go through the democratic process with Kamala Harris. We had to destroy America in order to save America. We flood it with 20 million illegal immigrants that don't think like Americans, don't have the same values, the same thinking, the same Judeo-Christian beliefs. So that, you know, this hypocrisy runs really deep. Now, going back to the situation with Charlie Kirk, some top conservative commentators were on the Piers Morgan show, and they're all trying to work through this situation like the rest of us. But I thought it was really insightful. Let me play that, and then we'll react to it.
I'm finding myself very caught between, on the one hand, wanting to honor his legacy of unity through debate and coming together to take down the temperature, and then wanting to honor his legacy of telling the truth. And the truth is, this is not a both sides issue. The killer killed him, according to police reports, because he found Charlie Kirk to be spreading hate. This is a view shared by every single prominent Democrat. Yes, there are people on Blue Sky advocating for violence, but what actually caused this was the utterly quotidian, utterly ubiquitous demonization of the political opposition from the left. And it has just led to violence because they said the other side were Hitler and Nazis. They said that speech is violence. To combine those two things together is to sign the death warrant of prominent conservatives. And that is what we are seeing again and again and again. And it is utterly facetious to suggest that there is any comparison between political violence on both sides. Every example they bring is not actually showing that, whether it's Governor Shapiro, whose attempted assassination was from a Free Palestine leftist, or whether it was the Minnesota assassinations, which were from somebody who said he was operating at the behest of Democrat Governor Tim Walz. There is a culture among Democrats at the highest level to suggest that their political opposition are a danger, and that suggests that their lives are forfeit. And I want to come together. I do. I love what Shank said. It brought tears to my eyes. I had to reach for a tissue while you were playing Charlie's words. But at the same time, we cannot unite with people who are lying to our faces about who we are, who will not take responsibility for the fact that they suggested that we are Nazis because of totally legitimate views that reflect the majority of Americans. So what I say is, let the left say we were wrong. It is legitimate to vote for Donald Trump. It is legitimate to be pro-life. It is legitimate to believe that there are only two genders, and we were wrong to suggest that that was not the case. We were wrong to say that that is hateful. When they say that, I am waiting with open arms to take down the temperature.
Two things that stood out to me. The first one is that Democrats have been telling their people that speech is violence. It's not. There's a difference between violence and violence, right? Like Charlie Kirk was known for having some pretty heated debates, but I mean, people challenged him to fist fights. Let me take you out back. And he was like, I don't want any violence. This is debate. You are happy to have your opinion. I'm happy to have mine. And the other one was that this is only one-sided and that it's the right. The right is the violent, but it's our president that's been shot at. It's Charlie Kirk that's been killed. You start digging in and you start realizing that it's not conservatives killing each other. It's Democrats that are fomenting this rage on the mainstream media. What stood out to you?
Yeah, exactly what you said. And those are the really big examples. You can find millions of smaller examples. Go talk to any young conservative on a college campus, and they will tell you they are frightened to share their views. They will tell you that it takes an act of courage to go out and say anything that contradicts the narrative, even things that 5 years ago everybody understood, like a man is a man or a woman is a woman. And so what we're dealing with here is an effort to intimidate people into silence. What we're seeing here is an effort, I believe, to divide Americans on purpose. And frankly, I've been very concerned with some of this rhetoric that we're seeing in terms of the celebration of what just happened. I do believe, and I put out a very long statement about 2.5 years ago, that there are powerful forces that want to see a civil war in this country. They want to see Americans slaughtering each other. And I believe there are actually hostile foreign actors involved here, too. I don't think this is all domestic. I think the CCP is involved in stirring up division and a radicalization in our country. I believe that with the open borders, we got a lot of these agents in our country, huge amounts of money pouring into this, including for people like George Soros and some of these big foundations. There's an effort to pour jet fuel on this fire. And what you said is absolutely correct. The violence is almost all coming from unhinged voices that have been radicalized on the left by sinister forces behind the scenes using tools like education, like media, like social media. You know, TikTok is such a good example of this. TikTok like huge links to the Chinese Communist Party. And you look at the things that the algorithms are steering these young people into. It's not just transgenderism, it's radicalism like you can't imagine. They don't do that in China, right? It's only here with Americans and across the Western world. So I do believe that we're facing a massive attack, as some of the Soviet defectors tried to warn us 40, 50 years ago. America, you think you're in a peacetime situation. You're not. You just don't understand that the war is raging all around you, and you better pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, you could say the same thing of fentanyl, right? Like China, they haven't gone to war or fired a single bullet, yet they've killed more people than World War II by sneaking fentanyl in through the cartels. Like this is just different war that we are at. But to equate words as violence, I mean, this Tyler Robinson, I could be wrong. Did he ever go debate Charlie Kirk? Did he show up on campus and stand in front of a mic and say, here's why I think you're wrong? Like, you're wrong. The very guy I watched over on CNN, the guy that was asking the question about mass shootings and violence, he's like, I'm very opposed to Charlie Kirk. I did it at the microphone. And as I'm asking about gun violence, boom, a gun, right? You know, a bullet right through the neck. And he's like, I'm horrified. Like, we should be able to talk to each other, but we can't. Okay, you mentioned George Soros. President Trump was on Fox News saying that there's too many rioters and agitators in America, and that they aren't using their First Amendment right of freedom of speech because it's pouring over into violence, vandalism, burning stuff down. And the fact that they can do it day after day after day, who are these people? Why don't they have jobs? Why are they so violent? He now believes that they are being funded and paid, and that it all leads back to George Soros, Alex Soros, and the Open Society. Let me play this clip, and then we'll talk about it, because I know you study George Soros a lot.
I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant, and this woman stood up. I looked at her immediately. She had money. She wasn't serious. They get paid for it. They're professional from Soros and other people. And we're going to look into Soros, because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people, because this is more than like protests. This is real agitation. This is riots on the street. And we're going to look into that.
He is saying he wants the Department of Justice to open an investigation on George Soros, Alex Soros, and the Open Society. Your thoughts on that?
It's so interesting to hear him say that, Stephen, because several years ago, my colleague William F. Jasper, a fellow senior editor at the New American Magazine, did a whole article explaining how George Soros is committing multiple felony criminal offenses that are identified in the statute books, including RICO, including funding rioting that produces violence. I mean, these are criminal acts, right? It's not like a difference in policy or politics. When you're talking about breaking criminal laws that are in place for the protection of all of society, that moves beyond the realm of difference of opinion and political debate into the realm of criminal activity. So I was very, very thankful to hear Donald Trump say that. It's long overdue. You know, George Soros is one of many. Even last year, when we had some of the crazy riots on the college campuses and the violence and the attacks on the Jewish students, turned out George Soros was funding a bunch of the pro-Hamas hate groups that were running around causing this chaos on campus. Why would he be doing that, right? And George Soros is one of many. In my book on the Deep State, the Invisible Government Behind the Scenes, I have a chapter on the money men behind all of this. George Soros is obviously one of the key ones, but there are many others too. The Rockefeller dynasty is a huge source of funds for the rent-a-mobs that we're seeing, for the radical groups like the Sunrise Movement that helped foment the Black Lives Matter eruption that we saw in 2020. There's massive money behind these things. These things are not happening organically. Yes, they're preying on young, radicalized, dumbed-down kids who are coming out of these indoctrination camps, but there's huge money behind this. And until we unravel that, we're not going to be able to rein this in. So Trump is doing something hugely significant. And folks, we need to move in this direction or our country will not heal.
I noticed that Bill Gates has quietly instructed the Gates Foundation to cut ties with Arabella, other large Democrat groups. Do you think this is strategic? He's realizing, oh, wait a minute, I got to get my name away from these? Or do you think over time he said, maybe these are not the best place for my money. What do you think is going in Bill Gates' mind?
I think Bill Gates is in it for Bill Gates, and he has been funding a lot of very nefarious things. Not the same kind of things as George Soros, but things that are equally dangerous. The climate movement. I go to the UN's climate summits every year to expose the stuff going on there. Bill Gates' fingerprints and money all over this thing. The tyranny that we saw in response to COVID, so much of that was actually funded. Even the pretext for the tyranny was funded by Bill Gates' money. A lot of it is, of course, about making money. Right? As the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evils, and that's very true. But I think Bill Gates also has an even more nefarious agenda. He is in this for control. He's obsessed with this idea of genetic engineering. And part of it is his dad was a patent attorney. His dad understood the importance of intellectual property, as did Bill Gates. That's how he made his fortune, with computer programs, having the intellectual property for that. He wrote an article in the Journal of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is like one of the key deep state groups in this country. The magazine's called Foreign Affairs. This was like 8 years ago, called Gene Editing for Good. He said, we already edit the genetics of our plants, our crops. We already edit the genetics of our livestock. Now we need to start genetically engineering people, babies. So I think Bill Gates is an extremely dangerous character. I think he sees the political winds. He sees that Americans are sick and tired of the violence, the rioting, the left-wing extremism. Probably a little bit of a smart PR move here to distance yourself at least a little bit from this stuff. But I wouldn't trust Bill Gates of hell, as I like to call him, as far as I could throw him.
Yeah. Okay, final question. George Soros is being called in to testify about his connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Hopefully, we'll get some kind of answer, but do you think any members of Congress will have the courage to say, oh, and by the way, why were you abusing USAID? And by the way, why were you funding the illegal invasion of the United States with third world country citizens? By the way, what are you doing to rig elections in the favor of district attorneys and then pressuring them to change the law? You think anyone will have the courage to ask George Soros that?
I think there's a handful who will. I know some real good guys up there. They're small in number. You can count them on less than 2 hands. But there's some people up there who have a backbone. And what really makes a difference, because a lot of the guys go up there with good intentions. You meet them on the campaign trail before they're up there. They're genuinely good people. They want to do something good. But then they get up there and they find out how things really work. And they find out that I just was talking to William Binney a few days ago. He was the technical director for the NSA. So they have every phone call, every email, every text message you ever did. And once you get to Washington, as Chuck Schumer said, the Senate leader for the Democrats, the intelligence agencies have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you, is what he said on MSNBC, talking about Donald Trump, the president of the United States of America. If they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at the president of the United States, what do you think they could do to a lowly freshman congressman or even a longtime senator? These people have a lot of ammunition at their disposal. And most of the people who've been in Congress for a long time have learned the way that things work. And if you ask the wrong questions, I mean, you can say things on the campaign trail. Nobody's really going to care. But if you ask the wrong questions in a way that seriously threatens the power of the establishment, well, you might end up with an ethics investigation or scandalous photos popping up on the front page of your local newspaper. And so there's a real swamp that Donald Trump has alluded to in Washington, D.C. So I hope and pray that we'll have some significant questions and even better, some significant answers from these investigations. But it's going to require, I think, concerted effort from Americans. We can't just depend on our politicians to do the hard work. We've got to put the pressure on, and we've got to keep the pressure on.
Yep. I agree. Alex, thank you so much for your time. If people want to follow you and learn more about Liberty Sentinel, where can I send them?
LibertySentinel.org is the best place. People can sign up for our newsletter. It's free. Just put your email in there. We'll never sell it. And really appreciate you having me on, Stephen. Thank you very much. Your show is fantastic. I know this is a tough time for everybody, but let's be in prayer and let's make sure our country doesn't descend into the abyss. So we need more voices like yours. And again, I'm grateful for you having me on, Stephen. Thank you.
Amen. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You as well. Thank you, sir.